competition would have put you out of business a long time ago. And so it's super important to ask. In fact, marketers, I think most marketers are people who like the idea of people, but they don't really like people. It's like a law of nature. It's absolutely everywhere. Not only that, it's fractal, which means there's an 80-20 and an 80-20 and 80-20.
Right, my amazing superstars, we have on today a living legend. If you guys, by the way, don't know Perry Marshall and you're doing Google ads, then you are living under a rock, because he is pretty much the OG of this space. I think in many ways, for like, at least for myself and a large number of us, like I literally only got into Google ads because of Perry. And many years ago, wrote the Ultimate Guide to Google Ads, which was kind of like the intro book as well. The 80-20 stuff, which is what I want to pick his brain on today, is like the deeper level strategy, the stuff that never changes in Google. First of all, Perry, appreciate you doing this. I know you're a busy man. We got a lot of love for you over here in our world.
Great to be here, Dennis. You introduced us, and I'm like, yeah, let's talk to Frankie. So,
Dennis,
hello, Frankie and Isaac. Great to be here. It's an honor.
Thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedule. Excited to hear some of your thoughts, especially as how Google and all the ancillary platforms have developed since you started with them.
Yeah, actually, one of the things that you revolutionized for me, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. You had an idea that just made it so simple called forest trees leaves. And these are like the optimization things. And I realized when I heard you say that, and this wasn't just true in Google ads, really like all the platforms, is that I was optimizing those little doors that would, swing the needle 1%. If I used a green button instead of a red button, it would change something. Yeah. And I realized that, like 99% of the advertisers are not at the level they need to be testing leaves, and they need to be testing much bigger things. I would love to hear just like that analogy for people who've never heard it before. And then like, what are those kind of big foresty things that really move the needle?
So I stole that from David Bullock, and the phrase is forest, trees, branches, leaves. And what it means is when you test stuff, which is super incredibly important on Google, and been saying it for 20 years, and most people still don't test their stuff. And you guys, because you teach this, you know this as well as anybody. But for those who do, what do you test? And it's really easy and really superficial to test things like, well, I'm going to change it from easy to free, or I'm going to change it from half off to buy one, get one, or I'm going to change it from half off to 50% off, right? And you're going to change these little things. And those are great things to change. But they're minor things. That it's like changing the leaves on a tree. You're like, well, what if I have oval shaped leaves instead of round ones? As opposed to, let's change the branches, let's change the tree, let's change which forest we're in. And so there's an old adage from direct marketing that it goes offer, list, copy.
Yeah.
And what it means is, like, what's going to move the needle? First is making your offer better. Second is sending it to a better list, or on Google AdWords, it would be targeting better people with better keywords or better audience demographics. And the third thing is, well, what words and lingo do you actually use to describe it? Because, to use an extreme example, if a guy was having a heart attack right in front of you, and you could stop the heart attack and make him healthy for $250,000, there's awful lot of guys that would lay on the floor and go, okay, and you don't have to have good copy, you don't have to have headlines. It's like, $250,000, your heart attack stops right away. Yes, sir. Here's my credit card. Right? He's like rolling around on the floor, getting his wallet out. And so it's very important what you test, because you go to the ridiculous extreme. You go, we could test every pixel. And 12 million years later, you would finally get an improvement, and your competition would have put you out of business a long time ago. And so it's super important to ask. I think you have to ask yourself smart questions. And my experience of the most successful people is they ask themselves good questions.
Yeah. I would love to know what are those questions, because I heard you say something on offer making. I think it actually might have been with Dennis, but it was something like if we get absolutely the right person, meaning you fit this kind of criteria, then here's like what we could produce for you. I'd love to hear kind of your thoughts on how you approach testing offers and how you approach like even thinking about those, especially knowing it's such a big door that swings, sometimes 10, 20x results.
The first thing I look for in any marketing, anything, is what has already taken place naturally under natural forces. So think like we've all like walked through a college campus or somewhere where there's the sidewalk is going here, but then there's this dirt path cutting across the sidewalk and it's going over here. Well, obviously a whole bunch of people felt like there should have been a sidewalk here, but there wasn't. So we just walked through the grass. And if you're going to go get a concrete mixer and you're going to dig up the ground and you're going to put in a sidewalk, you might as well put it where people are already naturally walking anyway. And really, that's what marketing, you have to do in marketing. You have to harness natural forces. And so I always ask people, what already got the people that bought, even if it was by accident, in fact, especially if it was by accident, what made that happen? Or what got people to refer? Like if people were, so just this morning, 2 hours ago, I was talking to a guy about potential third parties recommending his software, and he sells to architecture firms and stuff. And okay, so do you have vendors that tell their clients, well, if you're building one of these bridges, you should use their software to calculate the loads on the components of the bridge, and it's going to make our job way easier if you're using that software. I said, and he says, I'm sure it is. I just don't know where. And I said, so next time you're out sniffing around talking to customers, you're going to see that happened. You need to ask, why did it happen? And you don't have any business going and flogging people saying, would you please recommend us, until you've seen somebody recommend you on their own and you find out how it happened. Because we've all had our arms twisted by like some insurance agent or somebody who's like, so will you please recommend me to 5 other friends? And you're like,
yeah. So definitely on that front, Perry, I was actually just kind of curious to know, like when you mentioned like kind of these market forces, is like I kind of like think of that as like active listening. It's like all the great entrepreneurs I know are like really have ears to the marketplace, and I think not enough people understand that. I would love to hear your thoughts on like what you do active listening, and that's a part one, and then part two of that is one of the things I see in the people who do successful Google ads consistently over time is, as Dan Kennedy says, whoever can pay the most for the customer wins. In other words, whoever has the best, most sophisticated, most like serve their customers the longest and the deepest on the back end are the people who win over time. I would love to hear your thoughts, like that whole journey, start to finish, how you start the active listening to find out where those kind of beaten paths are, and then how you use that also to build a more sophisticated kind of back end for clients, customers, and so forth.
So let's start with what people call things. When you're developing a product, first of all, back to just a minute ago, talking about natural forces, the most successful products are the products that people made because a customer asked for it, right? Like it's not so often that somebody wakes up at 3 o'clock in the morning with a eureka idea and they're like, I gotta build an industrial doumoufflage. Right. All right, here we go. And this is going to be the most successful. No, usually like a customer has a problem and they're like, we've been duct taping this thing together and we got balls of twine and it's just sucks. Could you like make a, and they're like, okay. And then all of a sudden they sold 100,000 of them. So if that happens, because it should happen, like you should be developing products based on what people are asking you and the questions that they have and the problems that they're having. Now you have a product and you need a name for it. And so, yeah, you can and should you come up with 10 different names and brainstorm and whiteboard about it. But what you should do is you should start floating when you're on a Zoom or a phone conversation with a customer and you use a name and he repeats it back to you a little wrong because it's more natural to him to say it a different way, you take notes. And so, like, let's take my book, 80/20 Sales and Marketing. I've heard a whole lot of people call it 80/20 marketing. Well, that would easily be candidate number 2 for what to call the book. Maybe it should even be candidate number 1. Now that ship's already sailed. But like when we came up with the subtitle, The Definitive Guide to Working Less and Making More, we used Facebook ads and Google ads to test a whole bunch of phrases and see what actually clicks with people. And that's what I mean by active listening. If you pay very close attention to what customers say, they will give you all kinds of ideas and they should be fed back into testing Google ads because the thing about 20 years ago in Google ads, they were so cheap. 5 cents, 50 cents a click and all that. You could be the marketing guy or gal who hides in a cave, doesn't talk to anybody, just split tests, just look at Google Analytics, just looks at conversion data and runs the whole world by remote control, which most internet marketers, that's what they love to do. In fact, marketers, I think most marketers are people who like the idea of people, but they don't really like people.
Right.
I think they're introverts.
Yeah.
They think people are fascinating. They do like people, but they take people in limited doses.
Yeah, and they certainly don't want like, actual real customers. They want people just to pay them and then like disappear into the night and ride off on a horse.
And when I go to a party, I don't want to talk to 180 people. I go to a party and I'm going to sit in the corner. I'm going to talk to like 2 other people all night. We're going to have a great conversation. And like, hi, how you doing? Great. Hi, how you doing? Great. Hi, how you doing? Great. I'm not into that. I'm a typical marketer. And so it's very tempting to, well, I'm just going to do my Google Analytics. I'm just going to test my ads. But advertising is so expensive. It will almost never work now unless you have a whole bunch of that organic knowledge. If you've had 25 or 250 conversations with customers, you've seen every which way that conversation tends to go. There's all kinds of phrases. There's all kinds of things. You try something on the phone, somebody tells you a crazy story, and then that feeds into your advertising. And then you have this much richer set to go on of what do you know about your customers.
Yeah, I think that's one of the deep things is that I've heard that described as like businesses need to be market driven rather than like owner driven. But I see this like, if 100 local businesses start, it's often usually like, the plumber, because I don't want to work for somebody else. I want to be a plumber, but not because market forces say what we really need in, Frog Balls, Arkansas is one more plumber because we don't have enough people clogging toilets. Right. And there's always underserved pockets within there. So I love the idea of like actually connecting with customers and then feeding it back to the old Google machine. I love your thoughts for people who are introverts like that. Cause as you mentioned, I think a lot of marketers fit that, or at least we're a little bit weird into behavioral psychology. I find that like, I don't know if I'm as much of an introvert personally as I just like don't like talking to everybody as much as like they're not that interesting to me, but they are at the same time.
There's that. Yes.
But I'd love to hear your thoughts on like kind of introvert ways, because from what I'm gathering from you, like probably like, and I remember you had some stuff back in the day with Glenn Livingston about that, about like intentionally creating a feedback loop with your customers so that it's part of the process. So they let you know how it's going and what they're stuck on, and what their challenges are and how easy it was to find a solution and those kind of things, where you say like identify where that kind of beaten path is.
So yes, I'm wonderful that you brought up Glenn.
Just before you guys know, I just want to add, like, there's some stuff like Ryan Levesque pioneered about the ask method, where you get people like Perry was doing that like 15 years ago, long before it was. So anyways, continue.
That's true. So Glenn Livingston was one of my clients a very long time ago. And Glenn was this really fascinating guy who had done millions of dollars of corporate research, hired gun market work for big corporations. He got a degree in psychology. He was a psychotherapist. Then he got into market research, and now he's got Fortune 500 companies hiring him to research things. And so, like, for example, he coined the term Nextel for the Nextel phone company, and he did it by conceptualizing like phonemes of language, and the word nex had a nice connotation, and the psychologists could tell you what nex means to the human psyche, and tel, well, that's telephone, and you put them together, you have this nice word. He had done this crazy high-end market research stuff, and then he comes into the small business, small entrepreneur, cowboys and Indians space that we live in. Yeah. And he said, I have a methodology for making sure that when you introduce a new product, you'll virtually never go splat. Like, it's pretty much guaranteed to work if you do all these steps. And he had this whole course. And the course included instructions on how to hire a PhD student to analyze the statistical data for your project. Okay, it was that deep. And I said, Glenn, what's the 80-20 version? I said, 80-20 says there has to be 1% of this that will get you 50% of the certainty. It's got to exist. What is it? And he goes, that's a great question. Let me get back to you. And he did. He came back to me a couple weeks later. He said, I got it. And it's now chapter 21 in 80-20 sales and marketing.
Nice.
But I'll give you a slice of what it is you ask a customer or a prospect 3 questions. The first question is, so let's say they came off a Google ad and they typed in powder blue paint for daughter's bedroom, and they landed on your site. You say, what caused you to search for powder blue paint for daughter's bedroom today? And they will tell you, and you have a little box here, and they will tell you a story. Next question, how hard has it been for you to find an answer to this question? Not very hard, sort of hard, very hard. Third question, what would it mean for you if you really solved this problem today? Type me an answer. So I've got 2 fill in the blanks and 1 radio button. So what you do, you take all the answers, you throw away all of the answers except I'm finding it really hard to answer this question. You throw all the rest of them away. And you throw away the short answers and you keep the long ones. That's your market. That's who's going to give you money.
Yeah. That is so geniusly simple. I love that. And by the way, for those of you guys who haven't read 80-20 Sales and Marketing, you must, because it really does. I've seen it before, like, like Perry's done some stuff on Facebook ads and TikTok now, but like when you get into these ad platforms, and it really doesn't matter which one you get into, like folks tell me all the time it's overwhelming, and I get it, because like there's, you know, Facebook, I remember there's like, how many different networks do you want to put it on, this button, and you got to this targeting, this setting, and all of it can like,
Right.
when you start to realize, you know, one of the things that he has an awesome capacity for in the book is to break that down to like, what are the 3 or 4 things that matter, and then you start to realize, you know, they're just tools to reach humans. The offer making, let's get the offer right, let's put it in front of the right people. When you really nail the basics, what happens is I find all of these ad platforms, regardless of what types of campaigns you're running, they get easier because you focus on the stuff that's actually going to move the needle, and it gets away from all the kind of common, so quote unquote common wisdom. Because when I listened to the common wisdom before you, Perry, by the way, about like Facebook ads, is I had like 10,000 mediocre split tests running where, you know, we're trying, like you said, if we replace easy with free, and we're testing too many things and missing the big picture is like, who's on the other side of the ad? Why are they buying? What are they going through? What's their kind of customer journey? So I love that. I wonder if you have any other tidbits on just helping folks really understand their customers better and do that kind of like faster, because it seems like the real secret to the ads is not any of the technology, but it's the psychology of the person on the other side of the ad.
So here's how my Google Ads trajectory happened. So 2 months after AdWords was brand new, out of the box, nobody even knows what this is. 2 months later, I started using Google Ads. And about 9 months later, I read Richard Koch's book, The 80-20 Principle.
Yeah.
And it was like a lightning bolt. And I tell the story in my 80-20 book. I suddenly realized, wait a minute, this is like a law of nature. It's absolutely everywhere. Not only that, it's fractal, which means there's an 80-20 and an 80-20 and 80-20. And so at this point, I've been using Google for 9 months. And I've kind of got it sort of figured out, roughly. And I suddenly realize this is 100% 80-20 all the way through. Every column in that Google account, every ad group, every campaign, every ad, every tracking number, every website, it's all 80-20. And every single time, there's 20% of this that produces 80%, and 80% that only produces 20%. And this is about just chopping off that unimportant part and ignoring it. You either shut it off, or you set the bid prices really low, or and then you focus all your attention on, and it's like there's these little it's like this campaign, this keyword, this ad group, this website, this landing page, you know, the intersection of these 16 things, 0.1% of my campaign is producing 50% of everything, and all the leverage is there. And then there's a negative version. So there's the stuff that makes you the money, and it's like there's the 1% that makes you the money. And then there's the 1% that's losing all your money. And it's just about iterating. And once I realized that, I suddenly understood it. It was like, got it. And my very, very first 80-20 book in 2003, it had a chapter on 80-20 near the end. And in fact, I was asked to speak about Google AdWords shortly after I had read Richard's book. And because that speaking invitation came, all of a sudden, well, I got to write a book, and here we go. And that's how my whole thing began. And so literally from the beginning, it was, everybody thinks this is about Google Ads. It's really about 80-20. And then fast forward 10 years, I said, let's see, I think if I wrote an 80-20 book, it would sell, even though nobody's really asking for 80-20 because this is so powerful. I don't know, knock on wood, let's see. And I wrote the book, and people were like, yes, because now you gave me the master toolkit. I've had all kinds of people tell me, well, I read your Google book in 2007, And then I went on to something else, and I'm not using Google anymore, but I used LinkedIn and I just applied the principles there. And then I did Instagram and I applied the principles there. And then I did TikTok and I applied the principles there. And yes, because my goal was not really to teach them Google ads. My goal was to give them a marketing education.
Yeah. I love that.
But you need I'm not sure if it's from a mathematical perspective or from a philosophical perspective, you need the 80 to reveal a 20, right? So
yes, you do.
So let's say, okay, so let's say you use simple numbers. You have 100 keywords, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I start with 100 keywords. Now, 2 months, and I see this. I mean, I've seen probably thousands of separate Google Ads accounts over the last decade, and it's true. It is true, like you said, and it is, let's say, extrapolated across every column, across every metric. It seems to be fractal. Okay, so you start with 100 keywords, and then the 80-20 principle reveals to me that 20 of these 100 are great. They're great keywords, right? Okay.
Yes.
So fantastic. So now I either ignore or I marginalize or I shut off 80 out of those 100 keywords. And now I'm left with 20 winners. Okay, now, so the logical next step would be that somebody reading this or somebody trying to replicate these principles would be like, okay, I'm just going to try to start with 20. But now if I start with 20, now my 80-20 principle reveals that there's only 4 keywords that are really. Now, who's better off? The practitioner who wound up with 4 keywords and is happy with those 4, or is it the practitioner who started off with 100 and wound up with 20 and is happy with those 20? Or is there a point where you could over-index on 80-20 and you end up missing or never having the opportunity to discover potentially very, very good profitable channels, keywords, tracking numbers, whatever it may be, because I'm searching for a Shangri-La, which is mathematically impossible because there's always 20% of whatever the hell you're doing that's going to be better than 80%. Do you understand what I'm asking? Am I being clear?
Yes. And so I'll give you a couple different answers to that. So one answer to that is, if you look at your relationship with your wife, and let's say that you've dated her for 2 years and then you asked her to get married.
There's no 80-20. She's right 100% of the time.
You could say, what date caused her to say yes? And you go, oh, well, the one on July 14. You go, so I should have just asked her out on July 14 and skipped all the other dates. Like, that's ridiculous.
Right.
Like, it is true that July 14 was like a really red letter date in your relationship, but it took all the others. And that can be true with keywords too. You can find, well, these keywords did not cause the conversion, but they searched 16 times and they did all these things and they went through all these other keywords and then they bought, and I stopped bidding on these keywords and they all stopped. So let's take back to your 100 versus the 20. It depends on your budget. If you have, let's say you're a big company and you have a big budget and you're smart, which is kind of rare for both of those things to happen at the same time.
Tax, as he likes to call it. The AdWords stupid tax.
Right. But if you have a large budget and you're paying attention and you know what you're doing, you start with 1,000 keywords and find all kinds of little things that somebody with a small budget would have never been able to do. And maybe you start with 1,000, you narrow it down to 200, and then with your 200, then there's 40 that are really important, and then there's like 8 that are super important, and there's 1 or 2 that are incredibly important. And you optimize the snot out of those very few, and you still have this diversity of all the other many. But it may also be that you're on a very skinny budget, and the best you can really do is pick some sub-segment of that market that nobody's really paying attention to. And you go, well, I can't compete selling potbelly pigs, but I can compete selling Vietnamese potbelly pigs. And there's like 20 keywords for that market, and I'm just going to do that. So you're exactly right. There's always 100% somewhere.
Yeah.
You're never going to change that.
Want to ask you, Perry, just how we're doing on time. Can we keep you another 5 minutes? Because
another 5 or so would be, yeah, be good.
Okay. Is what I'm hearing for you guys more than anything is really, I don't think enough beginners understand this, is that it's an iterative process. Like the idea that you're going to just put up your first ads and they're going to hit a home run and you become an overnight millionaire. A lot of people come to ad platforms with that mentality and it's very rarely successful. And as you kind of are both alluding to, it's like starting out with a presupposed idea and then trimming the fat over time until you have only the 20% that's kind of left.
My 18-year-old son is reading Don Quixote right now, and he can't put it down. He says it's a fantastic book. And there's this line in the book where somebody says, many people go out to shear sheep and they come home having been shorn.
Ad platforms in a nutshell. There you go. Right?
Absolutely. Like, hey man, like, you're going to have to master this thing. Like, you don't just saunter in, well, I'm going to go in some industry I've never heard of, and I'm going to start a ad platform that I've never used, and I'm just going to go make a killing. Like, this is a recipe for you having your 401k emptied out.
Yeah.
Right. Like, man, no, it is iterative. And Tom Malash, he's the co-author of my Facebook book. He says, feedback always wins. Feedback always wins. In fact, you should look at anything that you go start, any marketing campaign you put together, any product you sell, in terms of how many chances am I going to get at the wheel to make this better and better and better before I run out of money or before my deadline is up.
Yeah.
Because see, when somebody is an established incumbent in a Google AdWords market and they're spending $1 million a month, let's say, the platform is already tilted to favor them over the new guy because it's much less risky for Google to just keep sending the ads to the incumbent. But what people don't realize is, well, if the incumbent is smart, they have also tried 187 different things that didn't work, and they know what those were, and you don't. And it might be, well, you are 186 failures away from figuring out what's going to work, and you've only got the budget for 15, so don't even start.
Yeah. That's huge. I feel like I could probably carry this conversation on with you for days, Perry, but since we have time. By the way, he's got some awesome stuff besides all the books he's mentioned. Like I'll leave that for you guys to discover, but some of the stuff outside of Google Ads, he's a very deep thinker, kind of philosophical guy. But Perry, for those of you guys who are just discovering you for the first time in this Google Ads world, tell them where they can go find out more. What should we do next?
Well, most important thing I think you should do, you should just read the 80/20 book. I mean, yes, I got a book on Google Ads and it's on Amazon. I got a book on Facebook ads. I'd love for you to buy those. But the real secret sauce is 80/20. If you master 80/20, if you get to where, if you really understand 80/20, anybody could like jolt you out of a sleep at 4 o'clock in the morning and say, look out the window and tell me 5 80/20s, and you would be able to do it because it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And when you can see that, like falling off a log, you will be able to walk into any business, any ad campaign, any agency, any advertiser, any product, any service, make more money, lose less money, have less waste, make more profit, get more customers, pay less for your clicks. Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah. And I would also add for those
Frank, yeah, I'm jumping just because I'm 6 minutes late to a call I forgot about. Perry, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. You're an OG And we've all looked up to you at my agency, and I know I speak for Frankie, and I know the whole group will be really happy to hear your thoughts. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Great to meet you. Take care, Isaac.
Okay, talk to you soon. Bye.
Appreciate you, brother. I was just gonna say you make ad platforms a lot easier for people like me who are listening to all the conventional wisdoms that says you got to pay attention every bell and every whistle, and it's like, no, just worry about 2 or 3 things. All right, Perry, I won't keep you. I know you got to run. Appreciate you so much for doing this, and that's all I got to add. And I'll hit Andrew here. Hey guys, if you like this video, you'll probably also like our free Facebook group, Beyond Agency Profits, Agency Lifestyle Design. You can get free copies of the book inside here. I look ridiculous. We're doing weekly Q&As, giving answers to all your questions. Some of the best, smartest, brightest people. We've got lots of industry leaders doing 7, 8 figures and beyond. It's a literal who's who of the brightest agency owners that I know, as well as lots of tips on scaling and stuff, books that work. So if you're not already part of it, you're going to want to be part of it. So make sure to click the link. I put it in the description of the video as well as in the pinned top comment below. So just scroll down and you can join, and it's totally free.